Hello everyone and welcome. This is a new episode of Food for Diabetes where we explore nutrition options to get diabetes under control. This episode we're going to talk about attack of the VINOs. What are the VINOs? Let's find out. If you remember from last time, we talked about the ideal plate for healthy eating with diabetes. 1/4 of the plate needs to be the starch and it had certain limitations we talked about last time. The vegetables need to be half the plate and protein needs to be 1/4 of the plate. Now last time we talked in details about the starch. This time let's talk about vegetables. First of all, you can have as many options as you want, and that is unlike the starches that we talked about last time where you have to limit yourself to one option. Now here you can have as many options as you want. You can have at least half the plate, but there is no limit to the amount of vegetables that you could have. And they can be cooked or raw. Now let's look at an example and see if this represents what we're talking about or not. Half of the plate is occupied by corn on a cob. Now, is that a healthy diabetes meal? The answer is no. And the reason for that is that even though this is a vegetable, it is a starchy vegetable, so it qualifies as a starch. If you remember what we talked about in the options of the vegetables, there are certain things that go under non-starchy vegetables that are safe to have, but certain things are actually not vegetables but should be considered starch. That's why I call them VINOs, which is vegetables in name only. If you remember, starches include not just the bread, rice, pasta, and potatoes, but also things like corn, sweet peas, yams, winter squash, and various kinds of beans. But there are so many good options of vegetables that you could have, and you can have multiple options of them and as many as you want. Now, is this plate represent some options of vegetables that we want to have in our meal, or are these VINOs? Well, actually they are VINOs because you have here corn, you have sweet peas, so these are not the vegetables that you want to include in your plate. Now this would be perfectly fine to include some corn and sweet peas and beans also and call them the starch of the meal, and you would take 1/4 of the plate that is occupied by a starch. But if you want vegetables, then you need to look for other options. So for example, this would be a good mix of vegetables, including some squash, peppers, onions, broccoli, and so forth. Now, after we've discussed this and understood it better, let's test our knowledge and see if we can identify which meal of the following is a good meal for diabetes and which one is not. Now, does this plate look like a plate that has a good proportion of vegetables and a good proportion of starch and protein or not? Well, the answer is no, it doesn't, because even though it has some green, in this case colored greens, but it has also several options of starch, including the mac and cheese, the black beans, potatoes, and bread. So this all adds up to more than 140 grams of carbohydrates in this one plate, and this is not a good diabetes option. How about this option? Here you have some protein. You have beans and quinoa, but the portion of it is small and limited, but the most of the plate is occupied by Brussels sprouts, broccoli, and spinach or kale, and that is a good option for diabetes. So I would say yes, this is diabetes friendly. How about this? Now, one of the things that we need to remember is a plate, a healthy plate should be colorful. A plate that is only bland, one color, for example, rice or potatoes, is not a good plate. But this plate, even though it is colorful, but it has a lot of starches. It has rice, sweet peas, corn, and black beans, which adds up to a lot of carbohydrates that some of them are VINOs, vegetables in name only. They are disguised as vegetables, but in reality they are starches. I would say this is not a diabetes-friendly plate. Finally, let's come to this plate and talk about it. So here you have a meat option. You have brown rice, so even the starch that is in the meal is in the form of a brown rice, which is a better option to choose than white rice. But half the plate is occupied by Brussels sprouts and mushrooms, and mushrooms are an excellent vegetables. They are very filling and they do not raise the blood sugar. So this is a perfect diabetes friendly meal. Now remember, for the plate method to be successful, you have to identify what are the non-starchy vegetables that you can have unlimited quantities of. They include the green beans, artichokes, broccoli, Brussels sprouts, cabbage, and many other options that can be made in a tasty way. Remember the VINOs and remember to identify them. Subscribe to get more content as I create more videos about nutrition, and have a great day.